Let's create handmade paintbrushes today. Hi everyone, Patty here. Handmade paintbrushes are a delightful and rewarding endeavor that allows artists to personalize their tools and deepen their connection with their art. For those who enjoy mark making in their journals, the process of crafting unique paintbrushes or mark making tools can be both meditative and inspiring. This guide will walk you through the steps to create your very own handmade paintbrushes using readily available materials. To begin your journey into making handmade paintbrushes, gather the following materials: plastic wrap, saran wrap, wooden sticks or dowels for handles, strong adhesive or glue gun, rubber bands, scissors, sandpaper, paint or varnish. Select wooden sticks or dowels that feel comfortable in your hand. You can use twigs from your garden, chopsticks, or even old paintbrush handles. Make sure the stick is not too thin or weak and will break as soon as you put any pressure on it. This stick is from a maple tree and is a nice size. I can get 2 handles from this one stick with the length of the stick. You will need to cut your stick to approximately 8 to 12 inches long. It would be best to use a pair of garden clippers to cut your stick, but mine are packed and we are a tiny house and living right now, so I have limited amount of supplies. I tried to cut the stick with a craft knife, but go to a pair of metal cutting scissors I had in my scissors supplies. Again, I would recommend using a pair of garden clippers to get your stick the length you want. I do like a little bend in my stick for interest. The main thing when picking your stick is to get a strong stick that won't break when we put pressure on it. Remove any loose bark on your stick. Cut down any nubs or knots on your stick so you don't gouge your hand. Sand the stick to remove any rough edges. I'm using an emery board to go over the stick and remove the rough edges. Paint or varnish them to add a personal touch, which we'll do this later. The bristles are the heart of the paintbrush. You can choose from a variety of materials, each offering different textures and effects. Natural hair, such as horsehair or squirrel hair, provides softness and flexibility. Feathers can create unique patterns, while plant fibers add a rustic touch. Experiment with different materials to discover what works best for your mark-making style. Today, we will be using plastic wrap and making a flower mark. Pull off a couple feet of plastic wrap and lay flat. Roll from one side up, forming a roll of plastic wrap. Fold in half after you have rolled the plastic wrap halfway up the width of the pulled-off piece. Roll the remaining piece till you have about 2 inches left of a tail to use to wrap around the stick. Wrap the rolled plastic wrap around the stick. I'm wrapping this one tightly, which is nice for some types of mark making, but the wrap is too close together, then you don't get to see a petal look to the mark. You may need to add another layer of rolled plastic wrap to achieve the size of flower you want. Keep adjusting your wrap, leaving some high areas and some low areas. Add another layer of rolled plastic wrap till you get your flower to the size you want. Roll the wrap and layer another piece around your bud. I like to leave a flat tail of wrap that I can use to wrap around my stick and have something to wrap the rubber band around to hold the flower onto your stick. The looser the wrap, the more petal appearance you will get with your mark-making tool. This one is wrapped tightly. We will make another one and wrap a looser wrap later. Use a rubber band to hold the plastic wrap in place on your stick. You can get fancy and add material or embroidery thread right where you have added your rubber band and cover the rubber band with a decorative look. You may choose to make more than one of these so you can have a variety in sizes. When we add paint to the brush, having more than one size adds texture and interest to your mark-making flowers. I keep trying to make this one looser after forming it. You can add a little glue to the plastic wrap to keep it from unwinding, or add a rubber band around the flower, also holds the plastic wrap in a round shape. The trick is not to wrap it too tightly so you get a petal look. With your handmade paintbrushes are ready, it's time to explore various mark-making techniques in your journal or on some scrap pieces of paper. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Pick a paint color you want to use. I like using dollar store parchment paper squares to put a dollop of paint onto. I'm just going to add my marks to scrap pieces of newsprint paper and brown packaging paper. I also have a tissue paper. We will roll the brush with our wrist and make a mark that looks like a free-form swirl. Make some heavier and some lighter. We'll go over these with a second color to get some depth to our flower marks. This is the brush we just made, and let's see what kind of marks we get. See how it is just a smear of color versus a petal look? This will be fine for a center of our flower, but it needs a little variation. It's a little hard to see the gold on the brown packaging paper, but when making a collage and ripping these flowers out, it will be pretty. I try a darker, rich espresso metallic color. It just looks like brown here, but it is still pretty and it has a metallic shine to it. Dab into paint and swirl around to get good coverage of paint onto your brush. Then tap onto your desired paper and twist lightly with your brush, lifting up and gently twisting. Keep practicing with the technique until you get the desire and the look that you're wanting with your flower swirl. I have Posca pens that work great for painting the sticks. If you have a little bark come off, you may need to go over the area a couple of times to get the color uniform. This stick, I just do bands of color around the stick. Add a few dots and squiggle lines to add some fun marks to the brush. Keep layering the bands of color till you have all of the stick painted that you want colored. Be as creative as you would like with your stick painting, or as elaborate as you want. Just have fun. This first flower we made is just too tight for me, so I want to do a variation to the form flower. I heat up my glue gun and make a petal look onto some acetate. I try to form a little area with the hot glue to look like petals, just like you would make a stencil with your hot glue. I measure my mark making tool to make sure it will fit. Let that dry. We'll add that at the end to our mark making tool. But what about just adding hot glue to the bud and see if I can get a little more definition to my flower? I thought the hot glue might melt the plastic wrap, but it didn't. The hot glue needs to dry. Don't leave it laying sideways or the hot glue runs off the edge. I could cut it, but it still left a smear of glue versus a petal appearance with the glue. In the end, I end up gluing the form stencil piece on the acetate to the top of this hot glue that ran. Let's make another flower, but make the plastic wrap looser. Follow the steps from the beginning and roll your plastic wrap. Just make sure you don't pull it tight. Have some big bulges in some areas, some skinny lumps in other areas along the roll of the plastic wrap. Loosely wrap around the stick, having a big bunch of plastic wrap stick out on a side. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. This one I put the rubber band around the plastic wrap to hold it into shape, but don't pull the rubber band tight. We want this one to be very loosely woven around. I also want to add a little rope that I have laying on my desk to the top of the plastic wrap to give this brush a unique look, and it also holds the plastic wrap to the stick. Put a little of the hot glue onto the base of the flower and wrap the rope around the stick. Make sure your ends are secured with hot glue. Be careful not to burn your fingers. A wooden skewer works to hold the hot glue rope in place instead of using your fingers. Keep wrapping the rope and adding glue till you get the plastic wrap secured to the stick. Cut off any excess rope and adhere the cut end with hot glue. Let's go back to the brush where we had put the hot glue over the tightly woven flower. Now I realize that the hot glue ran off the plastic wrap and I need to cut it into a shape and cut the drips off the flower. I want to put some marks onto tissue paper. I'm trying to use my gold embossing ink, but this pad is pretty dried out and didn't have enough ink on it. You can't see it on the tissue, so I tried it on regular printer paper. Added a little more dark blue paint so you can see the marks a little better. Let's make some marks. I tried different colors of acrylic paints, and some on tissue and some on printer paper, going back and forth from the tightly woven versus the looser woven till I get some pretty marks on the paper for collage fodder in my journals. I have 3 sizes and types of this plastic wrap brushes now, and each one makes a little different type of mark. This is really fun, making marks. I don't want to waste any of the paint that I have on my paintbrush, so I just added a few dots on the tissue paper and use up all the paint on the brush that I was using to get paint out of the bottles. I even put a little paint on the handle of this brush, being it was just plain bark showing, which can be nice all on its own, but metallic turquoise, how can you go wrong? I still left a little of the natural bark showing on the top of the brush. More mark making to use up the paint on my brush. To ensure your handmade paintbrushes last, it's important to care for them properly. I leave the paint on my brushes, which adds more depth the next time you use them, but it could chip off. Store your paintbrushes in a dry, cool place to prevent damage. Creating handmade paintbrushes for mark making in our journals is a fulfilling and creative process that enhances your artistic expression. By crafting your own tools, you not only gain a deeper connection to your work, but also open the door to endless possibilities for unique marks and textures. Embrace the journey, experiment with different materials and techniques, and let your handmade paintbrushes become an integral part of your artistic toolkit. If you'd like to see me make a few more of the types I have here, leave me a comment and we can make some with feathers, grasses, and so much more. Last little addition to this flower head is to add the dried glue piece we made earlier. I wanted to cut the glue so it didn't have any big blobs on the formed flower. It trims very easily with scissors. Just cut the big blobs and strings off from the hot glue formed flower, keeping it in a rounded shape that will fit the plastic wrap flower. Glue this onto the top of the plastic wrap flower and let dry completely before trying to use it. I'm just using art glitter glue or barely precision glue. I let this dry upside down to make sure it was firmly attached to the plastic wrap. Hope you have some great ideas to make your next mark-making tool. Thanks for watching. Bye now.